Welcome, everybody. We're excited to not only welcome our strong HMANA partner, Vic Berardi, but also all of you. Thank you for making the choice to be with us today for what we know will be a great talk. We're always excited to hear Vic speak, so I'm sure you are as well. My name is Josh Haas. I'm a partner of HMANA, the Hog Migration Association of North America. And again, welcome everybody. I'm also joined by Julie Brown, HMANA's Migration and Programs Director. So thank you all again for being with us. We've got an exciting presentation planned. Before we get too far ahead of ourselves, just a few housekeeping notes. We are streaming through Zoom today, and this is webinar style, so you will not have the ability to unmute yourselves or share video or anything like that. That is on purpose. You do, however, have the ability to open up your chat and engage with us. So please, at this point, if you're willing, please open up your chat and say hello. Tell us where you're dialing in from and maybe where your closest migration site is that you like to frequent. But more importantly, use that chat to ask questions. So as Vic is providing his presentation today, if something sparks some interest that maybe you have a question about, please feel free to put that in the chat, and Julie will take care of managing those questions so that at the end of the talk, she will facilitate that question and answer time with Vic. Administratively, back to Zoom. If you don't like the view that you're seeing right now, feel free in the upper right-hand part of your screen. There should be a little button called View, and you can customize that to exactly how you'd like it to look. With that, the only thing I would say is we are coming somewhat hot off of our 50th anniversary celebration that we held in Duluth with the Hawk Ridge Bird Observatory last month. And maybe some of you were there. If you were there, I'm sure you had as good a time as the rest of us. It was a wonderful celebration. So just wanted to take this moment to thank everybody that did participate, whether that was virtually or in person, for helping us celebrate this momentous occasion. With that, I'll turn things over to Julie Brown, and she can introduce our speaker for the day, Vic Berardi.
Thanks, Josh. Welcome, everybody. I'm just joining by my phone for a few minutes while my computer is updating. We're excited to welcome Vic. Vic, who's been very involved in all things HMANA for as long as I can remember. Vic is the founder of the all-volunteer Illinois Beach State Hawk Watch, which has conducted 25 seasons of full-time hawk migration monitoring since 2000. In 2013, he co-founded a new site at the Fort Sheridan Forest Preserve, also on the shore of Lake Michigan in Highland Park, Illinois. Both of these sites contribute data to the study of raptors migrating along the western coast of Lake Michigan and through urban areas. Vic served as the Central Flyway editor for Hawk Migration Studies for several years. In 2014, he was the recipient of HMANA's Appreciation Award for his outstanding service furthering hawk migration studies and conservation. In 2009, he was awarded the Service to Chicago Area Birders by the Chicago Audubon Society. In 2007, he was awarded the Grassroots Conservation Leadership Award for raptor education and research. Vic is also an accomplished photographer and regularly donates his photos to raptor conservation efforts. Many of his photographs have been on the covers of our Hawk Migration Studies journal, also on our website, also on social media, on our calendars, on our greeting cards, on our framed awards. Vic is one of our go-to raptor photographers, and we're always appreciative of his beautiful work. He's also contributed to books by well-known raptor experts, including Brian Wheeler, Jerry Liguori, and Brian Sullivan. So if nothing else, Vic, this will be a wonderful look at just a chance to enjoy some of your wonderful photos.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much for that introduction, Julie. And thank you, Josh, for getting everything in order here. And thank you all for attending. I'm going to be talking about winter raptor surveys, a little bit about winter raptors in general, and how you can get involved. Most of the photographs in this presentation were taken by me, unless otherwise noted. Okay, let's get started. So, what is a Winter Raptor Survey? Well, it's a volunteer science project for raptor enthusiasts, which I hope that everybody on this call is. I assume you are. And two, it's a systematic method of collecting data of wintering raptors for future studies and research. So, why do these winter raptor surveys? Well, one, to collect data for population studies, two, to collect data for habitat use, and three, because it's fun. On a chilly winter day in January, it's just a lot of fun to get in your car, go around, look for raptors, drink some coffee while you're doing it, and come home and look at all your data. So what do you have to do? You got to run a self-designated route. You pick it. You identify and record what you see. You identify habitat and behaviors, and you enter your data online. And I'll be getting it more into this later on in the presentation. So one thing I want to point out from the very beginning, on Winter Raptor surveys, you're kind of combining all your skills. You're combining your skills as hawk watchers by looking in the sky for raptors. You're looking in the tree line back there for any perch raptors, and there may even be some on fence posts. But some of them might be on the ground. And you may come across a scene like this and say, what am I looking at? Well, I was lucky in this situation. This bird started coming up and was hunting juvenile red tail hunting over that grassy area. But then you'll require other skills with some raptors that don't leave the ground at all, like this rough-legged hawk. So you're looking in a lot of different places, but you're pulling over on the side of the road, hopefully, to do this. So on the left is what we might typically see at a Hawkwatch site. On the right is what we're also going to see on winter raptor surveys. And as I'm sure all of you know, they're both red-shouldered hawks, adult on the left, juvenile on the right. So keep that in mind when you're doing winter raptor surveys, is that not all the raptors are going to be close or flying. So there's going to be more birding skills involved than hawk watching skills. Okay, so what might we see? Well, I broke this down into four categories: the widespread wintering species, regional species, California condor you're only going to see in California basically, and like osprey only in southern Florida. The rare winter species, like the Swainson's hawk and broadwing hawk, again, probably only Florida. Gyrfalcon can show up almost anywhere in the northern states. And then the non-wintering species, you can see there's four of them. Although last week there was a report of a swallowtail kite in central Florida, and they do return in February, late February. So the only ones I'm going to kind of go over are just the ones on the left, the 16 widespread wintering species. And the first one is the black vulture that surveys in the south and the east are going to see them more so than we will further north. Although this year we do have two new routes in southern Illinois, and although the Cornell map doesn't really show them, there's a good population of black vultures in southern Illinois. And you typically may see a scene like this of them roosting on a tree here. They look like they're communicating with each other or something's going on. Okay. And then the next one is the turkey vulture. We're all familiar with turkey vultures. They breed pretty much throughout the North America, not so much in northern Canada, but southern Canada. They migrate in large numbers, as many of you know. And this is a bird that the population is increasing considerably. And from what I've done a little research on, nobody knows exactly why, but the one thought that I like is more people, more cars, more roads, more roadkill. And here's a typical scene that you might see on a winter day. This was photographed in late December. And if you want to see a comparison of two of them, turkey vulture and a black vulture are very easy to tell apart if you got good lighting. All right, we are all familiar with bald eagles. Bald eagles breed all the way up to the tree line, to the end of the tree line, I should say, and they migrate south into the lower 48. This is a bird that's starting to also increase drastically in population. And we're seeing that on not only our hawk count data, but also on our winter raptor survey data. And it's probably due to, the elimination of the DDT and its components. But it's also, we're starting to see a lot more urbanization of bald eagles too. We have a couple of nests here in northeastern Illinois that are very close to housing projects and stuff. But a typical scene, you find them along rivers, areas where there's some ice and open water. Seeing dozens in a tree or counting 100 along a small stretch of land is not uncommon. Seeing them along on sitting on ice. A friend of mine told me the other day that last year he saw one bald eagle sitting on the edge of some ice, looking in the water, took off, circled around, dove down, and grabbed a fish. So, but they're also looking for dead fish that might be coming by too. You'll also see them nest building in winter and bringing nest material to the nest. I'm assuming this is the male on the right bringing some softer nest material. There may be some just newly born nestlings. This is late in March. This photograph was taken, or I'm sorry, late February. And one thing, if you're a photographer, or even just a hawk watcher, aging bald eagles is fun to do. You can see the various patterns here. If you're looking to learn how to do this, there's a number of sources, but I like the Brian Wheeler books for aging bald eagles. And bald eagles also can be seen on the ground. Almost every winter raptor can be seen on the ground, except maybe the falcons. This bald eagle here, we drove by it, came by about an hour later. Excuse me. Came by about an hour later, and it was still sitting on the ground. Okay, the northern harrier is another wintering raptor, breeds all the way up to the tree line, migrates into the lower 48. It's not uncommon to see them hovering over a grassy field. And again, keep in mind that when they do dive down, they may stay on the ground for a fair amount of time. So as you're driving by looking for raptors, always look on the ground. Adults and females and juveniles look different. The females and juveniles at great distances can be confusing, but the gray ghost, the adult male, is a sight to behold, especially on a late winter day like this one was. Okay. Now we come into a group of birds that have been been undergoing a number of changes in the last several months. And this one has not changed, the sharp-shinned hawk. As hawk watchers, we're all familiar with this bird. It's one of our biggest migrating birds. Again, breeds all the way up to the tree line and migrates into the lower 48. And I mentioned urbanization with bald eagles. Well, we're starting to see it with sharp-shinned hawks too. And there was a term introduced a number of years ago called short stopping, where a number of these birds are migrating through and they're lingering, mostly because of bird feeders. This one I photographed 2 years ago in our backyard, almost 3 years ago in our backyard. And one thing I could say is that if you have bird feeders and in the winter you're spending a lot of money, when one of these guys show up, I don't know how to say this, but they help you save a little money. The Cooper's hawk, this is one that has been going under changes. It does not breed anywhere near as far north as the sharp-shinned hawk, and we see a far less of them, probably because there's not much in the pipeline on migration. To see these raptors in your backyard is not uncommon. And as I mentioned, urban surroundings is where they're beginning to show up. This was some research done in the Chicago, Milwaukee area, and you could see in the middle there that Cooper's hawks and sharp-shinned hawks occupy 26% of the sites in Chicago, and that was in the late 90s. And today, this was 2018, it's gone up to 70%. I'm sure everybody that has feeders, and even some of you don't, see Cooper's hawks in their backyard. This particular one, this is a fairly busy road. This is a retirement community that you're seeing behind. And on the other side of the street, there's like an asphalt sidewalk. People were walking, riding bikes, talking, running. The nest was in this tree right here. And the birds didn't seem to be fazed by it at all with all the people in cars.
Recording in progress.
So to see a pair of them is a sight to behold. And if you see something like this in late February, there's probably going to be a nest nearby. Okay, the American goshawk, this is a birder's delight. They breed well almost up into the Arctic. They do migrate south. The only hawk watch I know that gets large numbers of them is Hawk Ridge in Duluth. This one did undergo a recent name change, and this beautiful illustration by Brian Margot says it all. We used to call it the Northern goshawk. We now call it the American goshawk. They changed the scientific name. But then something happened even more recently where both the goshawk and the Cooper's hawk have been taken out of the genus, or I think that's what the term is, and now put into Astor. And they're no longer in the accipiter genus. So we all know how Cooper's hawks and sharp-shinned hawks can be confused, especially at distances. So how does that happen in evolution? Well, the term is convergent evolution. And I kind of understand it, but when you read about it, you'll understand it as best as most of us can. But it's just a miracle that two different lineages can end up being almost identical in appearance and in behavior to some extent. Okay. So on to the Bootios. The red-shouldered hawk breeds in mostly in the eastern half of the country, although there is a California subspecies. There's also a Florida subspecies. The hawk watches generally in the east see more than like we do in Illinois. And if Hawk Ridge gets one or two red-shouldered hawks, that's like outstanding. So we don't really see a lot of them, but they do winter mostly in the east. Adults and juveniles, as you know, are different, but even adults could be different. These two red-shouldered hawks were photographed less than 200 feet apart, and they're considerably different in plumage. Okay, we move on to now the bird that excuse me for my clearing my throat. We move on to a bird that almost everybody knows, even non-birders know red-tailed hawks. They breed throughout North America up to the tree line, and adults and juveniles are different, as most of you know. And one thing that is fun about winter raptor surveys, and even as a photographer, is watching behavior. And in late February, we start seeing more pair bonding. We at a hawk watch, we may see some flight displays, and we may see that well into December and January, and some pair bonding. But by mid to late February, especially in the Midwest, we see considerable more of it, and they start perching close together, and they're wonderful to watch. I came across this pair a few years ago, and they were both looking straight over the car or the vehicle I was in. I'm assuming that's the female on the right, based strictly on size. And then watching them was fun because at one point it looked like they were having some kind of conversation going on here. And then the male goes and does this. I have no idea what that's all about. But anyway, it's fun to watch them, fun to take photographs of them. So now we get into what's the most fun part with red tails, and that's starting to identify subspecies. And Harlan's subspecies is drastically different than the eastern, like we've been looking at, in the last few slides. And here's the telltale spikes on this bird. So up until about 10, maybe 15 years ago, these were the accepted subspecies throughout the continent and then well into the Caribbean and on Cuba and Puerto Rico too, and on the Caribbean islands. And these were the ones that migrated uh, into the lower 48 and then also wintered in the lower 48. And the AL, the Allen census, from what I understand, up until recently, it wasn't thought to migrate. There's being more, the Red-tailed Hawk Project is doing some stuff on this, and there's more and more research coming about. But about 10 or 15 years ago, the Aviaticola was introduced. And actually, it was introduced about 100 years ago. And about 70 years ago is when more information was being gathered on it. And it was kind of sort of accepted in the 80s and 90s, but then it was forgotten about. And then in 2014, Jerry Liguori and Brian Sullivan wrote this outstanding article, The Northern Red-tailed Hawk, the Aviaticola Revisited. And birders and hawk watchers everywhere started noticing these more. Most of us as hawk watchers, from when we started hawk watching, back in the 90s when I started in the 1995, when I really got into hawk watching, I started noticing these birds too. But I just thought they were heavily marked birds. When I contacted some experts, they would tell me, well, those are probably the northeastern red tails, but they're not a subspecies. Well, that's all changing drastically. And here's an example. The bird on the left is an eastern, a borealis. We all know, we're all familiar with them. The one on the right is the one where we start questioning. We can see faintly it's got a banded tail. It's more heavily marked. It's got a dark throat. Both of these birds were photographed within a week or so of each other in Illinois. So what is that one on the right? Well, that's when it gets interesting. A more typical Aviaticola may look like this bird, heavily marked. Patagial marks are strong. The throat is dark. This was photographed in '09 in Indiana. This one was photographed in northeastern Illinois. It was, and this is one that I photographed from 2009 all the way into 2014. It kept returning to the same spot, but I made note that it was showing up awfully early, like in mid November or so, or early to mid November, and it was not leaving until late October, late April, I should say. So I had over the years I photographed, I don't know, maybe 50 different dark red tails. This was in Indiana in '09. When I started asking questions about this years ago, I got all kinds of answers. And one of them was from this paper that was banding studies from 1921 to 1995. And this was in regards to the darker red tails, that they were coming from the western provinces of Canada, migrating south and east into the lower 48. When the Red-tailed Hawk Project had a couple that they had put transmitters on, this kind of verified that these dark red tails were indeed doing what that paper had said. But lo and behold, continued research, continued efforts, and a lot more talk of these dark red tails being seen in the east. And one of the things is we don't see western red tails in the east, but we do see these dark ones. Well, last year in November, the Red-tailed Hawk Project, which I strongly advise you go to their website and see what they're doing. They discovered that these two birds, cricket and rose, were breeding just directly north and migrating into the lower 48 states. So the question is what are we looking at here? And the strongest thought right now is that these are the Abiatocola, the northern red-tailed hawks. And just recently, this paper, which you could find access to on the redtailedhawkproject.org, it was just accepted in August of this year, and it shows four dark red tails now that they've got not banning transmitters on. So this is some pretty cool stuff that's been coming out. So here's our latest map of subspecies. If you want to see a lot of variation, my wife and I took a trip up to the Hawk Ridge in late October of 16. And over the course of 3 days, the counters had counted close to 3,000 red tails. I got to photograph dozens of them, and this is just one dozen. And you could see all the variation right there. Okay. And they also can be seen on the ground. The ferruginous hawk is basically only going to be seen in the west, although we've had a number of them at our hawk watch in at Illinois Beach. And I know of one wintering one in Indiana several years ago. But for the most part, this is a bird that you're only going to see in the west. And then we come to my favorite raptor of all, the rough-legged hawk. They breed north of the tree line in the Arctic, completely vacate their breeding territory, and migrate to the lower 48. They come from cold climates. Seeing them on the ground is not unusual. Sometimes they look like they're just resting and not doing anything but that. You'll also see them also hovering, kiting over grasslands, similar to the harriers. Females are different than males. In flight, also, you could see differences. Juvenile lights, dark birds, they come in both light and dark morph, as most of you know. My favorite by far is the dark adults, and if you're lucky to go out on a day where there's some fresh snow and a sunlit sky, and that reflection of that snow on the underside of the bird is just lights them up beautifully. Now here's a bird that you also see a ton of variation. You got juveniles and adults, males and females in here, and you see a lot of variation there. These are perch birds, obviously, and these are birds in flight. There's only one subspecies of rough-legged hawk in North America. But throughout the world, there's four subspecies, one in Northern Europe and Asia, one in Northeastern Asia, one in Kamchatka, I think I'm pronouncing that right, and then our North American subspecies. In case you're interested, Kamchatka is a peninsula west of Alaska and Asia. And I often wonder if some of these birds might migrate into the North America. There's very little on identifying what the different subspecies look like. The only place I've got a good reference to is a book called Raptors of the World. There's a abbreviated version of that book and a very thorough version. And I want to introduce the Rough-Legged Hawk Project. The Rough-Legged Hawk Project does not have a website, but if you're on Facebook, that's where they post a lot of information, which is kind of cool. And my wife and I had an introduction to the program in a unique way. Last February, I wanted to go up to central Wisconsin to photograph some rough-legged hawks. I contacted a friend up there and asked him how does it look, and he said, well, there's not a lot of snow on the ground, so the birds are pretty scattered. And but he said, are you interested in photographing a special one? And I said, sure. What are you referring to? And he asked me if I was familiar with the Rough-Legged Hawk Project, and I said, yeah. And he said, well, let me contact you with Neil Paprocki, who I had some communication with in the past about a bird named Owen. And Owen, you can see its track that's from its transmitter from the Arctic all the way down. And what I find unique about some of these things is the way these birds go south, go east, go north, go west, go south, go north. They don't just follow a straight pattern on many of these birds. So Neil had informed me where the bird was at. It was not in the grassland area that we were going to, but it was near there. And it was this bird hung around this farm in the 3 days that we were there. And I did manage to get some photos. There's the antenna from the transmitter. And here's a few other photos. When I sent them to Neil, I apologized that these were far from my best photos of rough-legged hawks. But he said, no, no, these are exactly what I'm looking for. And what he was looking for was the health of the bird and any molt. And you could see some of that on the photo on the left. So it was kind of a neat experience to participate. And we're going to be going up there in the next week or so. Owen is back. And the way we found out was on the way to the conference up in Duluth, which Julie had mentioned was just, and Josh mentioned was an outstanding event. Uh, Neil had texted me and said, Vic, when are you getting up here? We got track that Owen is coming along the Lake Superior shoreline. Well, it passed through Duluth on the day that we were driving up there. And obviously we didn't see it, and they don't even know if it passed by Hawk Ridge. But Owen now has returned to the same farm, and this was tracking from November 17th, and it was there as of last week. So hoping it's still there and we can get some more photographs of it. And this is the only place where you can find out any information. Neil is doing a webinar in early January. And if you go onto the Southern Wisconsin Bird Alliance website, you can probably find more information about that. All right, golden eagle, another birder's delight, mostly breeds in the West, but we do have a population in around Hudson Bay area, up in eastern Canada. It's a joy to see a golden eagle, a juvenile with the white patches everywhere. One thing of interest, and I introduced this into the Winter Raptor presentation I did in 2020, 4 years ago, but there's been some neat updates since then. And this is on the Bernheim.org website. And in November 15th of 2019, they had published this. And what they showed was this pair of golden eagles, Athena, the female, and Harper, the male, their migration routes from fall of 2019 going south. And you can see they started in the same location. They kind of crisscrossed a few hundred miles south of there, but then they took completely two different routes to get to Bernheim Forest in Kentucky. When they returned back north, they also went kind of in the same route with Athena on the right going through Michigan and Harper on the left, the blue line, traveling through Wisconsin and Minnesota. Well, Harper went missing in April of 21, and when the track was put out from Athena in 21, when she made it all the way to Kentucky, and her migration route back in the fall of 21, what blew my mind on this is that Athena now took almost the same route that Harper had taken all those other years. Why that happened, I I don't know. I don't think anything has even been written up on it. But if you want to find out more, Athena did find a second love from what they've written up. If you want to find out more, go to this website, bernheim.org, and there's a lot more written up on it than what I'm showing here. It's pretty cool stuff. Okay. Kestrels we're all familiar with. They breed all the way up to the tree line. It's not unusual to see them on a wire like this. And if you're a photographer, they can drive you crazy. A lot of my photographs look more like this one, where the wire is dead sharp and the bird is like long gone. And you do get them once in a while on a stick, or how it's perched on that stick, I have no idea. Merlin, another bird that's getting urbanized. We're starting to see them breeding in northern Illinois. They're one of our favorite birds at our hawk watch here in Illinois. And they always have a look on their face for some reason. I don't know, but they're pretty cool birds. And then the peregrine falcon. Now, this one has to have a little discussion as far as wintering birds. And you could see that we've got some different breeding areas in North America. We did photograph one, and we do see them in winter here in Illinois and throughout the Midwest, and I believe even in the East and somewhat to the South. This one was photographed in North Central Illinois in 2019. You can see the scientific name has an XX in it. Well, I was able to get the band on this, contacted Mary Hennon, the director of the Chicago Peregrine Project, and she found out that this bird was born in 2012 in Racine and it was named Mike. Well, what is this bird? What is the subspecies or species? Well, I mean, subspecies. Well, in North America, we have the tundrius as one, we have the Pele as the other one, and then the other one has pretty much gone extinct, and that's the anatum. And as of 1974, I believe, east of the Rockies, there were no anatum to be found anywhere in the United States. And there was only a handful of pairs nesting west of the Rockies. So what are we looking at here on the shoreline of Lake Michigan, the rivers, the mountains out east, and along the whole eastern coast? Well, that's when it gets interesting because these are the reintroduced birds. So if you want to learn more about this, this is a fantastic book. It's a coffee table book. It's kind of big. It's like 12 by 15 inches or so. But they talk about the inclusion of non-native subspecies. And to learn even more about it, this is an outstanding paper that also mentions there's 5 subspecies represented in the current population of breeding peregrines. So my point in bringing this up is that this is probably what we're going to be seeing in the winter. And if we are having a lot of fun identifying subspecies in red-tailed hawks, we can even have even more fun with peregrine falcons. Because keep in mind, there are 19 accepted subspecies throughout the world, but mostly the ones that we're using in the States here are from Asia and South America, and they're coming from the guys that do the falconries. That's where it was started. There's a ton of great books on this stuff. All right, our last falcon is the prairie falcon. They breed in the west, so only the Winter Raptor surveys out west will be seeing them. We do have one that has been showing up in Illinois. I think it's like 8 years now, maybe more. One was spotted in Wisconsin a couple of years ago, and we've had 2 or 3 of them at our hawk watch at Illinois Beach. But we see them in mostly in late October into November. All right, so I've been talking a lot about winter raptors. How do we get started in the survey? Well, here's a typical road that you might be driving down. This is in South Dakota, and that's a rough-legged hawk up on the upper left. And the first thing you're going to do is go to HMANA.org. And when you get there, you're going to see this home page. Up in the upper left, you're going to go under Research and Conservation, click on Winter Raptor Survey. You're going to get to the home page for Winter Raptor Survey, and you're going to see this page here that has just a lot to look into. Everywhere from getting started to data entry directions to protocol. And then up in the upper left is view recent surveys. You will have to register to see anything in detail, but you can kind of get an idea just by going in there. And after looking at all of this, if you have any questions, definitely go to wrs@hmana.org and your questions will be answered promptly. The protocol is multi-page. It's outstanding. There's a lot in there. The basics, I kind of went over this at the beginning. You're going to plan a route. You're going to do a trial run, just to make sure that it's doable. Take note of different habitats. We ask you to submit your route to the committee, mostly because we don't want overlap that you might not know about. And there might be other things that we just might give you some information on. And then you run the route monthly if you're going to do it. We would prefer you do it December, January, and February. If you're only going to do one, we prefer that you do it in January. Then you run your route, and then you submit all your data to the site. So you're going to have a clipboard, let's say, with you in the car. We highly recommend you do not do this alone, that you have at least another person. Some of our surveys have a car of 4 people in it, which is kind of cool, the way to spend a winter day. And you're going to fill out your sheet here, your form. And then when you go online, you're basically going to just transfer the information. So how do you plan a route? Well, there's a number of ways of doing this. To get an idea of mileage and stuff, you can grab a tool like on the left. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce it, so I'll just let you read it. That you can buy them at Amazon for about $10 or $12. And then you go onto like a DeLorme map or a county map or something that you can work with, and look at the scale. Like this one on the Delorme map is 1 inch is equal to 2.5 miles. And what you're doing with with this meter is you're measuring your mileage. You can also go on Google Earth. This is a little bit more involved. I highly recommend you look for tutorials on this, because this is something that's constantly being updated by Google Earth. But basically, you're going to go in the path, you're going to name it. I suggest you also look at the different options here. One of the routes that I created, like this one here, is 25 miles. A route like this could take up to 2 hours. Don't forget, you're going to be pulling over. You're going to be observing carefully the ground, distant trees, the sky, everything. I also like using this tool here, the Garmin eTrex 10. They're roughly $100. You do not have to have this. But what I like about it is that when we see a sighting, I just press that black button, and it records the coordinates of where we're at. It's got very good instructions how to send the data to Google Earth. You can create a CSV file that'll give you all your coordinates based on your observations. So like bird number 3, it'll be at those coordinates. There's other options that are also good, and one in particular, Google Earth, I mentioned, you can get on your phone. The Compass app is basically going to give you coordinates only. Now it gives you elevation. But the one I recommend is the GPS Tracks. This is just a great app. And in it, you can do all kinds of things. It has a real good instructions manual. And as you can see here on the middle scene here, you can write your information in. So like for waypoint number 7, the third one down, fourth one down, it'll say Northern Harrier juvenile, and those are the coordinates. You can also add a few other notes. And the nice thing too is you can also take a picture of the bird that you just recorded. So GPS Tracks, I highly recommend you have a look at that if you're going to be doing these surveys. And then when you get home, you can transfer this and create another CSV file, and then just enter all the data. You could do copy and paste um, into your online entry form. So this is the way I do it. It's real easy and straightforward. We ask you to observe behavior. That's where it gets a little tricky. These 4 photographs were taken 7 minutes apart. We ask you to use your discretion. You can also put in your notes that the bird was perched and minutes later started hovering over a field. If you need to find your habitat, let's say you didn't mark it down for some reason, We see this rough-legged hawk out over this field. You put in the coordinates that you recorded. You could see in the satellite view the terrain. You don't see any lakes here. You go into street view, and now you go, oh yeah, that's right. That was a grassland that was flying over. A typical route may look like this. These are in Illinois. This one was 61 miles. It's an all-day route. And the routes don't have to follow, like I showed you earlier, a rectangle or anything. They could be anything that you design. So they could be like this, which is kind of a polygon, or I'm not sure what you would call that. Or they could be in a straight line. And on this particular day, this group had 41 raptors counted of five species. And this is the way it'll look online recorded, which is kind of cool. Every year, a report is written and sent to all the participants. And as of the 23-24 season last year, we have a total of 27 states participating. This has grown considerably over the years. One province, which is Ontario, the number of total routes is 106, which has also grown. And so far, we've got at least 7 routes new for 2024-25 season in Kentucky and in Southern Illinois. And the Southern Illinois is one I'm really looking forward to. At the conference, Carolyn Fegley, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, she's a counter out east at the PAC Hawk Watch. She did an outstanding display. A lot of people were very interested. She said a lot of people came up and asked questions, which was kind of cool. The program did start in Illinois in 2004. HMANA picked it up in 2007, but and we still have Illinois still has the highest number of routes. But this was a paper written back in 2013, which was really neat. And I highly recommend people look at Keith Bilstein's dissertation. It is a 300-page plus document, but his observation and his writing is just outstanding. So one area that we're hoping we can get some surveys done this year is in eastern Kansas, and I'll show you why. This was a trip that my wife and I took in 2014. And the typical road we were driving down was something like this. We were lucky there was no snow, but boy, the birds we saw. And where this area was at was here, eastern Kansas, western Missouri. And what we saw was just outstanding. This is just a small sampling. And we were only there for three and a half days, I believe. And you could see here bald eagles, golden eagles, red-shouldered hawks, prairie falcon, accipiters, harriers, whatever. But the red-tailed hawks, and if you're into the subspecies of red-tailed hawks, this is a tiny sampling. We saw well over 200 red-tailed hawks in the three and a half days that we were there. Just an outstanding place. So I got a couple of thank yous here, acknowledgments to Janice Sweet, who without her, she handles all the correspondence with questions. Paul, her son, does a lot of data analysis. Jason, I'm sure many of you know from Hawk Count. He does a lot with our website, our database, the committee, and last but not least is the participants and all their efforts. When I said we have 106 routes, there's well over 200 people that are participating. So please consider participating. Go to the HMANA website and you'll have the information there. And if anybody has questions, I think we have a little time for some questions.
Great. Thank you, Vic. Thanks so much. As always, just your presentations are so full of amazing photos. I could look at them all day. We do have some questions, so I'll jump in. You were speaking about heading to Kansas and which is an area full of raptors. Are there any particular regions that you're really looking, people are tuning in from all over today. Are there particular regions that where we need winter raptor surveys that you're
Um,
aware of?
yeah, we're pretty covered throughout, but every state can use more. We can use more in Wisconsin, in the southern states like Alabama and even Florida. It would be nice to do winter raptor surveys in Florida, maybe more in Texas, Louisiana, the southern states for sure. But anywhere where there isn't a winter raptor survey being conducted right now, and people can go online and look at where the coverage is now. But anywhere where they think could be good, uh, even like along the Mississippi River in Illinois and Iowa, we don't have any surveys there. And it would be great to get some counts there. It's known mostly for bald eagles, but on trips I've gone out there, I've seen Harlan's hawks and red-shouldered hawks, like, red-shouldered hawks in good numbers. So I would invite the people asking that question to contact WRS at HMANA.org, and Janice and Paul can definitely help out in the areas that we need help in.
Okay. And kind of on that note, Anne is wondering about viewing the existing routes online and where that's shown exactly. If you can go in and check out survey routes, right?
Yeah, if you
Without a
go into that
login.
data entry tab, and if you're not registered, and all you got to do to register is put your email address down, I believe. I don't think it's much more than that. And then you can see a little bit more detail on the routes and stuff. But if you
Okay.
just go
And
right on there, you're going to see general areas. It's just a big circle, and the route is somewhere in that circle. It's just not specific.
okay.
That's all.
Okay. And just making sure, I'm not sure if you mentioned it or not, Vic, these surveys that you set up, these driving routes, the same route is done year after year,
Correct.
right? So you have
Correct.
consistent data year to
Right.
year.
Yeah, we
So
consider
it's really
five
fun to
years.
see.
We consider 5 years the beginning of being able to do some data analysis. And we've got a lot of routes,
Okay,
especially Illinois, that have been run for more than 10 years.
that's great. It's great to see how much the program has grown in recent years. There's a lot of new surveys out there.
Yeah.
Um, okay, there's a few more questions. Alan's wondering, what's the best guess as to where ferruginous hawks pass through Illinois Beach State Park, where they're originating from?
No way of knowing. Yeah, no
All
way of
right.
knowing. Yeah, the one that was in Indiana during the winter, there was no band on its leg or anything. People did get a lot of photographs of that bird, but yeah, the ones we see at Illinois Beach, I mean, they just cruise right over, you know.
Yeah, it's not a
Yeah.
widely monitored species, so
No.
who knows? Alan had another follow-up question. In Vic's story, when there isn't any or much snow on the ground, like in central Wisconsin, where roughlegs scattered because it, or were roughlegs scattered because it suggests that no snow on the ground suggests warmer temps, and therefore fewer roughlegs would have migrated south?
No, not necessarily. When I mentioned that about little snow on the ground, the birds are going to be hunting throughout the grasslands. When there's like a foot or more of snow on the ground, they're going to be closer to the roads where the snow is either melted or it's just easier for them to hunt. And because it's easier for them to hunt, it's easier to photograph them closer to the road too. But when they're like, I don't know, 1,500 feet away from the road, you're going to be able to see them, but you're not going to be able to photograph them.
Okay.
Well, you will, but you're not going to get, yeah.
And Chris is wondering, do you do photography seminars online? Your photos are amazing.
Um, I have in the past. I don't have any coming up. But yeah, I have in the past. Yeah, I love sharing whatever I know, and The thing I can say with raptor photography, observation is number one, patience number two, and number three, always, always, always be ready. I have what I call the 2 second rule. Give me 1 second to get on the bird and 1 second to get some shots off. And if I get those 2 seconds, I'm happy. But sometimes you don't even get that much.
Right. Jerry is commenting that roots are needed in the Dakotas and western Nebraska too. So lots of raptors
Yes,
there if anybody's in
absolutely.
that area.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe Jerry does a route in near Pierre Grasslands, but my wife and I took 4 trips to South Dakota in the early 2000s, and I used to have it in here in this program from 2020. But yeah, I mean, in one day you could see 30, 40 rough-legged hawks, golden eagles, ferruginous hawks. The one photograph that I had on the slide with a ferruginous hawk in this presentation was taken just south of Pierre, South Dakota. Along, it was like right off the road, and the one trip that we went on, I think we had 4 different ferruginous hawks. We also had snowy owls, short-eared owls, uh, bald eagles, golden eagles, prairie falcons everywhere. Yeah, southern South Dakota is just it's a gold mine. So is parts of Idaho and Montana. Uh, but there's fewer and fewer people out in those areas. But we would love it if there was some surveys done there too. Yeah,
Might be a good location for a future winter HMANA tour.
it could
That many
be.
raptors.
It could be.
Um,
Yes.
the last question we have, Vic, is from Misha. Is there a recommended route length?
Um, well, number one, I want to restate and recommend that you should do this never alone. Although we do have some that are done alone, but those people are able to pull over in safe spaces because you're going to see a lot of observations as you're driving. So number one, we want people to be with other people in the car. As far as the length, that's why we want you to kind of do the route before you commit to it, to get an idea of how long. Raptors become active maybe about an hour after sunrise, which is roughly around 8:30, 9 a.m. To an hour before sunset, which is going to be, well, I'm talking on Central Time. You only have about a 6 to 7 hour window to do this in. So the length of the routes, a minimum of 25 miles. And as far as the maximum, it all depends on what kind of road structure you're going to be going down. If part of your road is a 55-mile-an-hour speed limit, well, you're going to cover a little bit more land that way. So we recommend it to be a minimum of 25 uh, to begin with. Yeah. And never do it alone.
Okay, great. One thing I was curious about, I know our probably current southernmost route is what, Florida or Texas? I'm
Um,
wondering, is there any interest in gathering data south of there? Has kind of started as a North American,
yeah.
project, but
Well,
is the committee encouraging more southern, where birds are wintering further south in the
we
tropics?
can't go too far south because South America is in our winter, that's their summer. So it wouldn't be called the Winter Raptor Survey, but maybe doing something in South America in what's our summer, their winter, that might be in line with a Winter Raptor Survey. Um, as far as the Caribbean and Mexico kind of, I guess, would fall into Winter Raptor Survey time, the same time frame as we're doing. And there are a number of our birds that do migrate well into Mexico. So yeah, it would be a welcome thing to have by far.
Okay, well, great. Thank you so much, Vic. That was excellent. I'm looking forward to doing my Winter Raptor survey. I always do it on New Year's Day on the border of Vermont and New Hampshire. So hoping to see some rough legs.
Yeah.
Um, I'll turn things back over to Josh for another minute.
Okay, thanks, Julie.
All right. Just again, thank you, Vic. Can't thank you enough. It's a great presentation, great photography as always. Thank you to all our participants for great engagement as well. Some really, really great questions. If you noticed early on in the talk when I introduced things, you'll notice that as usual, I mentioned we are the Hawk Migration Association of North America. For those that maybe didn't engage with us at our conference recently, it's worth sharing that with our growing support of migration sites into Central and South America, the executive committee and board began evaluating whether or not we should look at changing our name to better display our reach growing into those areas. And to make the long story short, it was voted on at our conference and approved to change our name to the Hawk Migration Association. So if you're like me, you might appreciate the shortness of that new name, but more importantly, it matches the reach and the growth that the Hawk Migration Association is seeing and the sites that we're beginning to support. In fact, there's 12 between Mexico and South America right now. And honestly, we see that growing further. So we're excited to announce that. And you will see changes foregoing over the next year with the new name. There's some legal things that we still have to get through. However, you'll see the website and other areas changing over the next year. So just wanted to mention that. And lastly, as you can see on screen, Vic hinted at some urbanization of both bald eagles and Cooper's hawks in his presentation today. So, Vic, whether you knew it or not, it was a great segue into next month because we're going to welcome Ed Deal, who will talk about the urbanization of Cooper's hawks, specifically in the Seattle area. So please register for that. You will see that registration link coming out very soon, and we
It's
hope you'll
out.
join us. So, with that, I will close for today, and I can't thank everyone enough again for joining. Vic, thank you. And Julie, any final thoughts?
No, that's it. I was just going to add that you can register. That registration is up now on Facebook and our website,
Excellent.
so you can sign up for that. But thanks,
Outstanding.
everybody.
Thank
Maybe we'll see you
you.
next month.
Take care.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Have a
Vic.
good day. Have a good
Bye.
winter.